All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, of all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Reading from the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, translation and commentary by Srila Prabhupada, Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, Chapter 25, characteristics of King Puranjan. Today's text number 34. In Melbourne, Australia. It's Tuesday, the 5th of November, 2019. Ihadya santam atmanam. Ihadya santam atmanam. Vidamanatatakparam. Vidamanatatakparam. Yeneyang nimita vira. Yeneyang nimita vira. Puri sharanamatmanaha. Puri sharanamatmanaha. Ihadya santam atmanam. Vidamanatatakparam. Yeneyang nimita vira. Puri sharanamatmanaha. Chant. Too high. Eyam vidita vira. Ladies? Anyone else? Word for word, iha, here, adya, today, santam, existing, atmanam, living entities. Vidama. That much we know. Na. Not. Tataparam. Beyond that. Yenam. By whom? Iyam. This. Nirmita. Created. Vira. O great hero. Puri. City. Sharanam. Resting place. Atmanaham. Of all living entities. Translation, this is the lady continuing to respond to King Puranjan's flattery. Oh, great hero, we only know that we are existing in this place, because he asked her, who are you? Basically. And so now she's saying this. Oh, great hero, we only know that we are existing in this place. We do not know what will come after. Indeed, we are so foolish that we do not care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. Please repeat, O great hero. We only know that we are existing in this place. We do not know what will come after. Indeed, we are so foolish that we do not care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This lack of Krishna consciousness is called ignorance. Now you're going to hear the word ignorant 8 times in this brief purport. Prabhupada's really highlighting the word. And then we're going to take another look at how Prabhupada says the word. In Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 555, it is called Parabhavastavadabodhajataham. Everyone is born ignorant. The Bhagavatam therefore says that we are all born ignorant within this material world. In our ignorance, we may create nationalism, philanthropy, internationalism, science, philosophy, and so many other things. The basic principle behind all these is ignorance. Sounds radical, doesn't it? Such noble pursuits as science, philosophy, philanthropy. What then is the value of all this advancement of knowledge if the basic principle is ignorance? Unless a person comes to Krishna consciousness, all of his activities are defeated. This human form of life is especially meant to dissipate ignorance. But without understanding how to dissipate ignorance, people are planning and building many things. After death, however, all of this is finished. Srila Prabhupada ki. Ihadyasantamatmanang vidamanatatakparam yeneyang nibita vira puri sharanam atmanaham. Om ajnanatimirandasya jnananjanasalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance. You know how Prabhupada would say that? How would Prabhupada say the word ignorance? Not all the time, but sometimes just to make us, to illumine the word, Prabhupada would say it in a certain way. He would say, ignorance. He wouldn't stress the first syllable, ig. he would stress the second syllable, nor, because then you remember the word ignore. And that's very significant. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So as I mentioned last time, I like to give little titles to these classes. So I call this class Lady Ignorance. And who is the lady? It's our materially contaminated intelligence. Yeah. As Prabhupada writes in the Gita, the verse, we touched on this last time. Krishna is describing, he's revealing to Arjuna where the enemy, lust, can be found. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. And then we identified, if we want to get rid of lust, what do we do first? Do you remember that? I asked everybody, do you think we should seek out lust in the senses first, or the mind, or the intelligence? And what was the conclusion? Do you remember? Senses. And that's what Krishna says actually in the next verse. Because the senses are the grossest. They're the most obvious places. It's easier to control the senses than it is to control the mind, which is trickier because it's finer. It's more slippery. After hearing the whole yoga system, what did Arjuna say to Krishna? Chanchalang himana. The mind is flickering. And Krishna granted the point. Yeah, it's possible to control by constant practice and by detachment. Now in the purport to 340, Prabhupada talks about all these strategic places where lust has infested our consciousness. Again, the verse is, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. We're totally captured, captivated, occupied by the enemy lust, from the grossest level up to the subtlest level. And now Prabhupada is going to elaborate. The enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul, and therefore Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places, so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. Mind is the center of all the activities of the senses, and thus when we hear about sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification. And as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Imagine if you have an army, and instead of taking orders from the generals, the army is taking orders from the foot soldiers. That's what's going on when we're captured by lust. Instead of taking dictation from Krishna and the soul being in control, and being in control of the intelligence and the mind and the senses, it's just the opposite. In the material world, we're taking dictation from the senses, which are just preying upon sense objects, and therefore we're always defeated. Moga sha moga karma no moga jnana vichetasaha rakshasinga saring shaiva prakriting mohining shritam. In the 9th chapter, 12th verse, those who are thus bewildered, it's right on the heels of ajananti mang buddha. You know, fools mock me, deride me when I descend into human form. They don't know that I'm Krishna and this form is not material. And then the next verse, those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So Satsvarupa Maharaj, or Srila Prabhupada once told Satsvarupa Maharaj, you should write a book based on this verse describing how everything without Krishna consciousness ends in defeat. And it's just one verse in the Gita. So that's our predicament. And then Prabhupada continues. He doesn't just leave us with a predicament, he always gives us the solution. Next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. This is supposed to be command and control up here. But instead, it's totally hijacked by the senses and the sense objects. Whoop. We've been hijacked again. Remember I had this trouble last time? The mic, Bhakta mic, blooped. He drooped. He drooped bloop. Okay, so intelligence is the immediate next door neighbor of the spirit's soul. It's so close to the soul. Krishna says at the end of the Gita that one who studies this sacred conversation worships me by his intelligence. Now that's when the intelligence is engaged by the higher self, not when it's been hijacked by the lower self. Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter, and thus with the mind and senses. So, lusty intelligence. That's not really buddhi. What to speak of medha, we're going to talk about two kinds of intelligence. We hear intelligence described in Sanskrit as buddhi and also medha. There's different kinds of intelligence. The spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes this as true happiness. This false identification of the spirit soul is very nicely explained in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 10.84.13. Sanskrit, and then I'll give you the English here. Quote, a human being who identifies this body made of three elements with his self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of birth worshipable, and who goes to the place of pilgrimage simply to take a bath rather than meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like an ass or a cow. Now usually cow is glorified, but sometimes the cow is used in a pejorative, in a negative context too. Okay, and so where the solution is comes in the next verse. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses. Yeah, we can do that. Satsvarupa Maharaj, I once asked him, how are you able to get up so early, like Prabhupada did at 12:30 and 1, and write? Because I was part of his biography team. I was a researcher, he's the writer. And he said, well, I found that by rising early, going to bed early and rising early, that I've discovered these hours are like gold because they're so peaceful and quiet. And I said, yeah, but how do you condition your body to get up so early? He said, the body, now this is a baseball analogy, so you won't maybe get it, but he said, the body's like a catcher's mitt. In baseball, there's a catcher behind the pitcher. Well, you have that in cricket too. And the catcher has a big glove so he can catch all the pitches, because sometimes the pitches get wild and sometimes the pitcher throws funny knuckleballs and sliders and hanging curves and all these different kinds of pitches. So the glove is really big. So Satsvarupa Maharaj said, the body's like a catcher's mitt. And if you have a mitt, then you can pound it into any shape you want, depending on what kind. Like a first baseman in baseball, he'll have a narrow, long mitt, so he can spear throws from the infielders. So he said, it's just like a catcher's mitt. you can condition it any way you want. You can condition it for sense gratification, or you can condition it for self-realization. Okay, so, yeah. So regulating the senses, and then Krishna says, he gives that hierarchy that we talked about. The working senses, right, like I'm seeing and speaking, are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence. I have a godbrother, Prahladananda Maharaj. You know Prahlad, he comes. Yeah. When he was brand new, he asked Prabhupada, he said, what's the difference between the mind and the intelligence? So Prabhupada gave a very interesting answer. He said, if you're ever way up high, say you're up high on a cliff or in a building, and if you hear a voice that says, jump, Prabhupada said, that's the mind. And then if you hear another voice that says, don't do it, that's the intelligence. Brilliant answers. Okay, and then finally Krishna ends the chapter. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So that's spiritual intelligence. Otherwise, when the intelligence is infested with lust, it misleads us. Now in his brief purport, Srila Prabhupada uses different forms of the word ignorance 8 times. Now I told you that Prabhupada, he would say ignorance. Why would he spin the word like that? Can you guess? I mean, ignorance sounds almost passive. Well, I didn't know, right? And what does the court say? Ignorance is no excuse, right? And then if you do the same crime again, then the punishment's worse. For a first offense, okay, you didn't know. It's no excuse. You broke the law. You got to pay the penalty. But then if you do it again, then the judge says, what are you doing here? You did the same thing? Well, then you got to pay this much more money, or you got to go to jail this much more time. So when we know better, the penalty is greater. So why would Prabhupada say ignorance? Yeah, ignorance is not passive, it's active. I may say I didn't know, but actually, when you get down to it, we're willfully, consciously, deliberately, I am deliberately ignoring Krishna. Yeah. Who knows in the Bhagavad Gita the verse where Krishna describes how we fell from the spiritual world? That's a good one. Prakriting Purushang Chaiva. Is that the one you said? No? Which? I'm sorry, say it.
13th chapter, 22nd verse says how we came from spiritual world to material world.
You say in 13:22, you said? Yeah, that's kind of after the fact. This is Purusha Prakriti Stohi. The living entity in material nature thus follows the way, thus follows. But how did we fall in the first place? There's another verse that's a little more going back. That's good too, but that's also after the fact. While contemplating the objects of the senses, right? But then go back. You got to go back. That's what she said. Well, it's a good one though. I mean, it describes, it's the story of our lives. While contemplating the objects of the senses, right? It's just scientific. Gita is so scientific. A person develops attachment for them. I'll answer the question, I'll tell you the verse in a minute, but there's a nice story of Brahmananda Swami at the time, Nairobi, 1972. He's driving Srila Prabhupada in Nairobi in the car. They're stopped for a light, and a pretty girl walks across the street. And Brahmananda, his eyes go like this, right? And then Prabhupada's sitting there, so he says to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, it seems hopeless. I mean, it just seems so natural to me that there's a pretty girl and I just follow her across the street. So Prabhupada is very gentle with him. Prabhupada said, that is natural. But a Vaishnava stops at thinking. You know, it happens, and then you don't entertain it. When you entertain the thought, then you go to the next stage, which is feeling. Remember? Thinking, feeling, willing. And then if you entertain it, and you really get into the whole feeling, and then it's willing, and then you're a goner. It's kind of like if you're in a river. Has anybody ever been in a river where you're near a waterfall? So the closer you get to the falls, the faster the current, right? Okay, so here's the analogy. You're swimming in a river, and all of a sudden you notice that you're swimming in the direction of the falls. Now, if you're smart, what do? You make a beeline right for the shore, right? You get out of there, you're in danger. And that's compared to the sense object coming before us, and then we just dismiss it. We stop at thinking. Now, if we're really foolish, if we're more foolish, then we just start to go with the flow, as they say. We just flow. What's the song? Do they have this song in Australia too? It must be universal in English. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. So that's the foolish materialist. That doesn't matter. Just go with the flow. So then we start to flow toward the falls, and that's compared to feeling. And then all of a sudden we realize, oh my God, this current's it's picking up because we're feeling it, you know. And so then we struggle, and we finally get to the shore, gasping. I had this experience actually in the Jalangi. Now we're getting. You got to remind me of where I'm going with these points. I get stories inside stories inside stories, like the Bhagavatam. So, yeah, it was 1978. The first time I went to India. I never saw Srila Prabhupada in India. I always regret that because I always heard that because India was so austere in those days for the devotees, the Westerners, Prabhupada gave us a lot of attention. You could walk in his room, ask him questions, tell him your challenges. You know. So anyway, so we were on parikrama to Bhaktivedanta Thakur's house across the Jalangi, if you've been to Sarabi Kunj. And, yeah, it's really nice. So on the way back, and this was 1978, the Jalangi at that point, at that spot, what do they call that ghat now? I forget. Yeah, Hular Ghat. Right. So it was really narrow. It was pretty narrow. But it was still the Jalangi, you know, part of the Ganga. So I thought, well, I don't need to take the boat back. I'm just going to swim. It was a real hot day, you know. So I started swimming. Right, you know, in my dhoti and everything, you know. But I didn't know about the currents. They always warn you, when you go to Mayapur for the festival, and during the morning announcements they always say, this is another reminder about the currents, because the Ganges, the Ganga, Mother Ganga, is very tricky, and you think it's very calm, and all of a sudden she has these currents, and then you're sucked under, and it happens almost every year. Somebody drowns. So anyway, I was swimming, and all of a sudden I hit the currents in the middle, and I was struggling. And I'm not that good a swimmer anyway, but I was going, and I thought I wasn't going to make it at one point. I thought, this is it. So what came into my mind when I thought I was going under? I don't think you know this one. It's a commercial for chewing gum in America in the 1960s. So this is 78. So this is a 13-year-old American chewing gum commercial. Because those advertisers know how to capture your consciousness, right? So when I thought I wasn't going to make it, all of a sudden I heard a voice. Hi ho, hey hey, chew your little troubles away, chew Wrigley spearmint gum. That's what I thought of. And I kept swimming, and finally, somehow I made it. And then I thought, oh my God, that's what I was thinking of. I royally flunked the pop quiz. The time of death is the final exam. I royally flunked the pop quiz. So thinking, and then we'll go back to the waterfall now. So then, if you let yourself feel the sense desires coming from the touch, the sparsha is a touch. And there's an actual connection. It's a subtle connection between the senses and the sense objects. So then if you keep going, and then you're just about to go over the edge. But the thing is, if you're that close to the edge, and then you have second thoughts again, oh no, I can't do this, but you're too far gone. Once thinking, feeling, and once willing has reached, you're compelled. And that's what Krishna told Arjuna. By what is one compelled, Arjuna said. And then Krishna, it is lust only, the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So Krishna says, and that thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to material senses, mind and intelligence, one should control the lower self by the higher self, and what is it? And thus conquer this insatiable enemy, and by deliberate spiritual intelligence, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. I'm just looking for my paper now. I always make a script, and then I lose it. Where'd it go? Oh, maybe it's in my pocket. No? Did you see the paper I had here? I just had it. Anybody see a paper under the... Oh, I see it. Okay, so ignore... Oh, so the verse, how I fell verse. Did you think of it yet? 7th chapter. If I say the first word, I'm going to hear a bunch of Sanskrit back, but that's not good enough. You've got to tell me what it means. When Prabhupada went to the Dallas Gurukula in 1972, so the teachers proudly marched the little kids into Prabhupada's room, and they started Matra Sparshastu Kante, the second chapter verses. And then Prabhupada was very pleased, and then he had a whole tray of cookies. And then he said, but what does it mean? And they didn't know what. So then Prabhupada told the teachers, they've got to know what it means, or else they're just being like parrots. So, okay, the first word in this verse. And you got to tell me the English. Icha. Second line. Sarva Bhutani Sangmoham sarge yanti parantapa. Okay, what does it mean? You see how the mind is? It's good that at least we program it with some Sanskrit, but then you got to know what that... Sanskrit is not my mother tongue. I've got to know what it means, or else it's not. O scion of Bharat, O conqueror of the foe. Any takers? I'm trying to prime the pump here. All living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. Ichcha and dvesha. This is the original schizophrenia. Yeah. I hate the fact that I'm not the Supreme, and I want to be the Supreme. This is the material desires in a nutshell. Like I told you, Prabhupada said, a material desire means a desire that can never be fulfilled. So, I hate God and I want to be God. It's like crazy. Okay. So, I heartily encourage every one of you, if you haven't already, it's worth every penny to purchase the Memories series by Siddhanta Prabhu, Illumination Television. You must see these. They're totally addictive, hearing devotees talk about their memories of Prabhupada. He's published 76 of them, and in number 73, there's a beautiful memory by my godbrother Kishore Prabhu from Scotland. And Prabhupada was either in Aberdeen or Glasgow. And there was a lady in the audience. This is all about ignorance. This is a great lesson of ignorance. Yeah, it's deliberate. So the Prabhupada is speaking. I think it was a Gita class. And then there was a lady in the audience who was a regular at the temple. And she wasn't initiated, but she was a regular at the temple. And she would always ask rather challenging questions. So Prabhupada got through speaking, and her question was rather... It wasn't only challenging, it was rather strange. And the question was, she just stood up like she was going to make a speech, and then she said, "So, you can see God?" This is Prabhupada's first visit. May have been the only visit to Scotland, 1973. You can see God? It's like she's doubting and challenging. And so Prabhupada, as I told you, Prabhupada didn't just answer content, he answered intent. He knew the consciousness of the person. So Prabhupada became like a little child and said, You're not seeing God? He just turned it around. Because as we say, the one who asks the questions controls the conversation, right? So, you're not seeing God? And then she was taken aback because she didn't expect that. She expected some kind of fight or something with Prabhupada. But Prabhupada just became very... It was a tactic, but he was trying to teach her something. So she's like bewildered. No, I'm not seeing God. Like she's surprised by the question. Like almost like, why do you ask me that? And then Prabhupada said, "Oh, do you want to see God?" And then she was challenged. She just put her head down and said, "No." She admitted, "I don't want to see God." And then Prabhupada looked up and he roared, "Therefore you cannot see God. You don't want to see God." So why can't I see? Krishna in Sri Sri Radha Vallabha, why do I see brass? Because there's a cataract of lust and selfish desire covering my vision. Yeah. So when Prabhupada would 8 times, and if he were reading this purport, I bet he would have said ignorance. I'm ignoring Krishna. Because if I'm conscious of Krishna, if I'm Krishna conscious, I can't try to enjoy this material world. Because I know who the enjoyer is. And as Prabhupada writes in the introduction to the Gita, we are also enjoyers, but how do we enjoy? Prabhupada says in the introduction to the Gita. Do you remember? There's a word. Yes, we enjoy by cooperating. The old story Prabhupada would tell from the Hitopadesh. Dashendriyanam, the 10 senses. Famous old story. The senses go on strike because the knowledge acquiring senses and the working senses, they think one day, oh, what is this lazy bones? You say this in Australia, lazy bones? This lazy bone, this lazy stomach, he just sits here and we're working so hard to gather food and just to satisfy him. So what's going on here? No more. We're on strike, So they refuse to feed the stomach. And then time goes on, and what happens? Of course, they become weak. And then they look at the stomach. Oh, that's what he does. He distributes the food we give him. He distributes the energy. So that's called yoga. When you said dovetail, when we actually give everything back to our beloved source, just like in the arti, we're offering everything back, right? All the sound starts, those very sense objects that we're trying to enjoy. We always want to hear something pretty, or see something pretty, or taste something delicious, so. And the arti is this giving back, bringing it to the yoga point of giving back. All the elements, the sound and the scent of the incense, and the flame, the sight, and the fresh flower, and this is all a giving back, beautiful yoga. But in the material world, we're just chasing the sense objects, and we're short-circuiting that process. It's not yoga, it's boga. So we're not happy. So what does Kaviraj Goswami say about that in CC? Bhukti siddhi kami sakali ashanta. Krishna bhakta nishkam sakali atayeva shanta. Thank you. Yeah, only the devotee is really happy. Because we've given up that game, that we say sucker's game, right? That losing game, that futile game of trying to mate the senses with the sense objects. Instead, we're offering the objects of the senses back to Krishna. And by cooperating, by making Krishna the center, we enjoy. We fall in love with Krishna instead of just trying to please these senses which are never satisfied and burn like fire. Okay, I'm going to read the verse again, and if you have any questions or comments, let's see. See, I lost my paper again. Well, c'est la vie. Oh, great hero. So, this is the lusty intelligence. We only know that we are existing in this place. What do they say? Be present in the moment, right? Be here now. It was one of the big books in the 60s. We do not know what will come after. Forget about. Now there's a good way of taking that and a bad way. Bhaktivedanta Thakur also said, forget the past that sleeps, and ne'er the future dream at all, but act in times that are with thee, and progress he shall call. That's if we're Krishna conscious. Then we can make the most of the moment. And Prabhupada was famously always present for everybody. We say, he could turn on a dime. He could be engaging in strategy to fight court battles 1 minute, and then he could be absorbed right in the Bhagavatam the next minute. Whereas it took us days to switch gears. We'd be so disturbed by something. But Prabhupada, no. As he told 2 devotees coming back to the temple, and I think it was Juhu, in the class afterwards, he said, even if the court does not give their permission, still you must come to Arti and dance in ecstasy. Okay, so what is it? How did I say? Lusty intelligence. She says, indeed, we are so foolish that we do not care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. So she's frankly admitting that. But if we're too lusty, if the conditioned soul is too lusty, then we don't care. That's all right. Just go for it. Go for the moment and suffer later. That's happiness in the mode of passion. 1839, right? Anybody know happiness in the mode of passion? Boy, it's really summing everything up in a nutshell. Krishna says, and that happiness, which appears like nectar at first, but poison at the end. How does that go? 1839 or 38. That happiness which is derived from contact of the senses with their objects, and which appears like nectar at first, but poison at the end, is said to be of the nature of passion. In this brief purport, Prabhupada just sums it up. It's King Puranjan, it's the story of our lives in a nutshell. A young man and a young woman meet, and the senses drive the young man to see her, to touch her, and to have sexual intercourse. In the beginning, this may be very pleasing to the senses, but at the end, or after some time, it becomes just like poison. They are separated, or there is divorce, there is lamentation, there is sorrow, etc. Such happiness is always in the mode of passion. Happiness derived from a combination of the senses and the sense objects is always a cause of distress and should be avoided by all means. But not considering consequences, we just let Maya sucker punch us every time until we meet a bona fide spiritual master, and he's not part of our dream, he's outside of our dream, trying to wake us up like an alarm clock. But sometimes I'm sleeping so thickly, I try to incorporate that ring of the alarm clock or the call of the guru into my dream. Right? I used to have dreams like that. Some people ask me, do you ever dream about Srila Prabhupada? I said, well, when I was a younger devotee, I used to have dreams all the time about Prabhupada. But unfortunately, it was this kind of dream. There's a movie producer, I don't know if you ever heard of Alfred Hitchcock. Okay, the master of mystery, right? So he would make TV shows and movies, and he'd always appear in his shows. He'd just walk in, and he'd walk out. He was like a little extra in the production. Bizarre, So I used to have these dreams where I was doing some nonsense, true confessions, and then Prabhupada would come into the dream, and he'd inspect what I was doing, and then he'd walk out. And the message was, I'm not interested in this. So when you're ready, I'm here for you. So give it up. Give up this lower taste. So we got to get a higher taste by diving deep into the life, teachings, mood, and mission of Srila Prabhupada. I'm happy to report I don't have those kinds of dreams anymore. But I'm still hankering for, kind of a Krishna Loka dream, but anyway, it's... Okay, does anybody have any questions? Questions or comments about the verse or the purport where lusty intelligence? We have a comment from Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for a wonderful class. About that,
Hmm.
Now you've been Maharaj in Delhi,
Hmm.
in Temple.
Hmm.
He said in such a situation you should think of that lady as expansion of Radharani. If you think of her as expansion of Radharani, you just cut off everything.
Yes.
That was the direction he gave.
Yes.
So that was, I remember that very, very nice. He gave a lot of examples also.
Yes.
The main thing was, if we think that she is expansion of Radharani,
That's the higher vision. Right?
Krishna consciousness.
Krishna, and Prabhupada wrote a very similar thing to a godbrother of mine. I think you know Sankarshan Prabhu. He comes down, doesn't? Yeah, Sankarshan Dasadikari. Travels the world with his dear wife and enlivens the devotees. And so Sankarshan Prabhu, we were brahmacharis together in Gainesville, Florida. And Sankarshan wrote Prabhupada a letter if it's okay to want to be a guru. Back then, in the 70s. And if it's okay to make music, like he used to play the guitar. Does he still play the guitar? Okay, good. All right. And I'm actually forgetting the letter, but the gist of it was that, before we come to Krishna consciousness, we're chasing the opposite sex. So he was saying, is it okay to want to make all the pretty girls Krishna conscious now? So Prabhupada said, yes, that's the way to do it. Think of them as Krishna's gopis, just like you were saying. And then when we remember Krishna, then we're not competing. We're no longer competing with Krishna, or trying to steal his property. We're not like Ravana anymore, trying to steal Sita from Ram. Yeah, that's the higher vision. Thank you.
That's what we always think. We want win-win situation all the time.
We want
Not to lose. Win-win situation.
win-win.
You don't want to lose at any stage.
Right.
This is our tendency.
Yes.
Like Ananda Abhesa. You want happiness all the time.
Yeah.
Uniformly and continuously. Uninterrupted. My question is to you. If you can tell something about Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, today's disappearance day, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam.
Oh. Well, it's too... I didn't... Śrīmad Acharya. So, I always get confused. Srivas is Gadadhar in the Panchatattva, but Srinivas was the disciple of Jiva Goswami? Pupil? Okay, well, that's all I know. And he's the one that wrote the 6 Goswami song? Yeah. So, if you know the 6 Goswami song, then you know the heart of Śrīmad Acharya. And they were the first book distributors because Sri Jiva insisted that all the Goswami's works be copied and be carefully kept at Radha Damodar temple. And then, of course, Sri Jiva being a magnanimous Vaishnav, he wants to distribute the knowledge. So there was that whole pastime of the books. They were on their way where with those books? Bengal. To do what with them? Distribute the knowledge. Okay, but then they were hijacked. They were by some... Anyway, it's a whole story. With a king, and his astrologer told him that there's a treasure coming, and the books were the treasure, but he thought they meant gold and jewels, and they plundered the trunk, and Srinivas took it upon himself to find it. So he was the one that went to the king, and he turned the king into a Vaishnav. So that's how great he was. And that's our challenge. That's our responsibility too. We've been given so much mercy from Guru Maharaj, from Srila Prabhupada, that we have to share the mercy. Yeah. So it's a triple tier. Is it the triple tier above? Yes. It's Srinivas Acharya and Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamananda Prabhu? Okay, well they were, wow, all their disappearance today?
No, only for Srinivas.
Srinivas, okay, yeah. So we can remember that that determination of Srinivas. He took it upon himself to be responsible, to find the lost treasure and fearlessly convert the very thief into a Vaishnava. That's all I have to say. I didn't prepare anything for.
If you want, I can correct you 3 4
Okay, really quick because it's after 9.
If I have the mic.
Yeah, you want the mic?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So, Śrīmad Acharya was one of the very important acharyas in our life. At the age of 14, he wanted to see Mahaprabhu. So he went, he wanted to go to Jagannath Puri, Śrīmad Acharya, from Katra. He was in Katra in Bengal and he wanted to see Mahaprabhu. So when he was going on the way, from Katra to Puri, Jagannath Puri. So when he was going on the way, at that time they had to walk all the distances from Katra to it's a long distance. So on the way he found a lot of people coming from the direction of Jagannath Puri and they were very sobbing, very serious. So he just took a bit of courage and asked them, what happened? So they said, Mahaprabhu has passed away, left the material world. So he was extremely sorry. And he wanted to either go back or just make his trip to Jagannath Puri. But he was so much in lamentation and disappointment, then he said, he made a pyre of wood and he wanted to sacrifice his life in the lamentation because he couldn't see Mahaprabhu. So then what happened? Mahaprabhu came in his dream and he said, don't worry Srinivas, we are always with you. Don't get dejected. Don't get morose. So he went to Jagannath Puri, met a lot of devotees. And then the second incident, when he was in Jagannath Puri, he happened to see Gadadhar Pandit. At that time, Gadadhar Pandit was also very morose. Because by that time, when he reached Jagannath Puri, it so happened that he asked, can you teach me some Bhagavatam? So Gadadhar Pandit said, I'm sorry, I'm not in a mood to preach because of Mahaprabhu. So at that stage, Gadadhar Pandit said, all right, you can take my Bhagavatam and read this Bhagavatam and enjoy. But the only flaw is that in our Bhagavatam, lot of prints have been because of the tears from Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit's tears. So many things were replaced. So you couldn't read properly. So he tried to get another copy. And then he wanted to go to Vrindavan. And because he was told in the dream, you see and associate with Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami. So when he reached there to Vrindavan, he found that Sanatana Goswami has left the material world. So that was second shock, very severe shock. Then when he reached Mathura, he came to know that Rupa Goswami has also left. So that was the third shock. And he just wanted to finish his life, give up. This is Śrīmad Acharya, such a great personality. Then what happened? He went to Vrindavan. He got another dream from Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami that don't worry, we are always with you. Go to the Vaishnavas in Vrindavan and take their association. So he came to Jiva Goswami. And then Jiva Goswami told, get initiated by Gopal Bhatt. So he got initiated by Gopal Bhatt Goswami. And then Gopal Bhatt told, go back to Jiva Goswami and learn from him. He is an astute, erudite scholar. You know all the, how many verses? I think 200,000 verses or something, more than that. In all Sanskrit. And then he met we sing those songs, you know, those Anal Pare, Neela, that let me fire and let me hurt my against the stone. That you were singing that song? Yeah. Nityanand Thakur, what is his name? Narottam Das Thakur, that's right. So he got association with Narottam Das Thakur, and they tried, and then they wanted to take the book. Have you got a few minutes? They went on a bullock cart in a special chest, so many books, and then they came across that Bandit, that Veerbham, King Veerbham, and then he had the help, as Suresvara said, he was held by actually he was a king, but a real bandit, murderous, very fearful person, most dangerous king you can hear in the history. And it so happened then he took help of those the astrologer, as you pointed out, and that astrologer told, somebody is coming with a very precious things, and they are taking to Bengal. He been told that. And he said, there are 3 persons. So King Birbhama, he made arrangements. He found out the best athlete robbers. And they prepared to take care of these 3 people. And when they were sleeping, they took that chest of books and took to the treasury of King Veerbhum. And it was nice. But the king, next day when he went to see the treasury and so opened the chest, he was very surprised. He was so morose because he was expecting jewels and a lot of money and cash, and he was so disappointed. But anyway, now this gentleman, Śrīmad Acharya, was staying with a Brahmin where the dacoity was taking place. So that Brahmin told that it may be possible that the underhand person is King Veerbhum. He is the culprit, but it's very hard to catch the king. So they made a plan that we must go to their king for an audience. So next day they went to the king and in their audience, and then there was a very great Pandit in the palace, and he started talking about Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So he was giving a commentary on the verse. So Śrīmad Acharya just stopped him. Sir, I don't agree. Like Mahaprabhu was telling to so I agree with you. So he took the permission of the king, and then he sat on the Vyasasana and gave the Bhagavatam class. And everybody was so pleased to hear Śrīmad Acharya. And then the king was so impressed, he fell on the feet in the palace itself. It's a very beautiful story. And he said, I am the person, I have made all this plan to take away all your books and everything. So please give me initiation. So that's how Śrīmad Acharya. And as Suresvara Prabhu said, he took the responsibility that he told Shamanand Pandit and Narottam Das Thakur, that because I am the senior most, I'll take the responsibility of finding this chest, these valuable books, because what answer will I give to my spiritual master? He gave me the responsibility to take all these books, and they have been stolen on the way. So you please go ahead and teach to the Bengali Vaishnavas all about things, and I'll follow only when I find out. Otherwise, I give up my life. So this is the amount of austerity. The people, that love for Lord, this is the love for Krishna. So this is Śrīmad Bhāgavatam's disappearance day. I've just cut short. There are a lot of other things, very important. But these three setbacks, by not seeing Mahaprabhu, then losing Gadadhar Pandit, and then losing Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, and then getting Jiva Goswami and Gopal Bhatt Goswami. So very interesting for our Vaishnava authorities to follow these lines. Thank you very much, Shri Prabhu.